Welcome to Mentors.
Welcome, Steve Stoller.
Hello, Kiki. How are you?
I'm awesome talking to you. I'm so
I'm
happy
so
to
excited to be a part of your podcast.
Me too. I want you to tell the audience about your awesome career because
Well, I'll tell you, I've been blessed. My name is Steve Stoller, and I spent 34 years in broadcast journalism, also known as television news. And it was a very interesting career. I started off in Macon, Georgia, then I went to Kearney, Nebraska, then to Asheville, North Carolina, then to El Paso, Texas, and then to Dallas. And in Dallas, I worked at Channel 4, KDFW, for 17 years. And then I went across the street to the competition at WFAA Channel 8 for 11 years. And after 34 years in the business, I then got a job with the city of Plano as media relations director. And I've been in that role for 11 and a half years. And I'm retiring very soon, next week, and heading to Florida for a new life in retirement.
yay, retirement to Latitude, Jimmy Buffettville.
Yeah, Latitude Margaritaville. It's a Jimmy Buffett themed community. There's actually three of them. There's one in Daytona Beach, Florida. There's one in Hilton Head, South Carolina. And the third one they built is a little bit north of Panama City Beach. It's about 5 or 6 miles from the beautiful beaches of the Emerald Coast of Florida. And we've actually had the house for 2 years, and it is a lot of fun living there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of your mentors who have helped you grow along the way in your career.
Well, my very first job was at a TV station. The call letters were WCWB, Channel 41 in Macon, Georgia. And I think it's probably, if it's not the worst television station in the country, it's definitely top 5. It was horrible. We used to say that WCWB stood for We Can't, We're Broke, or Why Compete, We're Beat. But I did have a mentor there. There was a gentleman he was kind of the producer, and he also was the leader of the newsroom. His name was Bill Kazarba. And I was coming in very green. I mean, I got a job while I was still a senior at Mercer University. And Bill was very good about giving me direction, giving me tips. And he went pretty far in his career. He was a senior producer at CNN. He worked his way up the ladder in different markets and very well respected as a producer. But he was a really good mentor. And then we had an anchor there. Her name was Michelle Harvey, and she was actually the news director as well. And she was really good, giving me tips as a very young reporter anchor. And, you know, all the way through my business, each television station I was at, there were always people who were senior reporters, anchors that had been at the station for several years that always gave me really good tips and pointers about little things I did. And actually, when I was at Channel 4, Clarice Tinsley, who's still there, 35, 40 years at that television station, she was also really good about giving me some little tips here and there of certain things, certain ways I should do things. So I'm very thankful for those people. Now, when I came to the city of Plano, it was a little bit different because they had never had a media relations department or a media relations director. I was the very first one. So the boundaries were kind of set from the beginning by then city manager. His name was Bruce Glasscock. But, a lot of it was just diving in and making something of it and seeing what works and what doesn't, and then just taking it, to the highest level you can. So, and same thing, I had no knowledge of city government other than covering it as a reporter. So there were a lot of people here at the city as well that gave me those little pieces of advice and information that helped me along the way.
So how about the people that you have mentored also, because I always believe in paying it forward once I'm helped to a certain level. And
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. Well, when I was at Channel 8, I worked out of the Collin County newsroom, which was at the Dr. Pepper ballpark in Frisco, where the Frisco Rough Riders play. And we covered Collin County out of that little small newsroom. And they had put me out there, and then Jobin Paniker was a new reporter at Channel 8, and they put him out there. I pretty much worked during the day, and then Jobin would come in and he would work for the 10 o'clock news at night. Well, uh, Jobin was younger at that point, and it's funny now, I think he's probably the best storyteller in the Dallas Fort Worth television news market. He is so incredibly talented. For 2 consecutive years, he's been named the National Press Photographers Association Reporter of the Year for his reporting. He's phenomenal. And I just had lunch with him earlier this week, and he paid me such an amazing compliment. He said, "You know, Steve, when I started working with you in the Collin County newsroom, he said, you taught me that you don't have to be a jerk to be a good reporter." And that meant so much to me. A lot of reporters, they're looking for the truth. And there's nothing wrong with that. They're hard nosed, they can be aggressive. That's not my style, and that's never been my style. You know, I really like to show compassion and sensitivity towards people. And Jobin is the same way. And it got me far in my television news career, and serving Jobin very well as in the same way. He's a very sensitive, compassionate person. And what sometimes the management of the television stations don't see is how the reporters are in the field, in the community, how they relate to people, whether they use sensitivity and compassion. They don't see that in the newsroom at the management level. And sometimes by being that way, it just puts you on an even keel with the people you're interviewing. If they see and sense that you're a sincere person and a caring person, I think that really serves you well as a reporter. And sometimes, just in relating to people, when you talk to them, when you interview them, I think you get a lot more things that are helpful to the story when the person you're interviewing feels comfortable with you. And when you take that approach, I think they do feel more comfortable with you.
And knowing you personally, that's how you are in real life, and you always treat people with utmost respect and kindness, and I admire that about you very much.
Thank you.
So I know that you probably had some interesting, fun stories. So do you remember something that stands out in your career, that
Oh my gosh, there's
a
so many.
story that,
Yeah, it's funny. One day I did the math and I figured out how many stories I did a week, how many years I've been in the business. I subtracted vacation days just to come out with a ballpark number of how many stories I did in my career. And I came up with 9,000. I did 9,000 stories
oh my
about,
gosh.
and you're with every level of life. I mean, one day you're with a homeless person who doesn't know where they're going to sleep that night, who doesn't know where they're going to get their next meal from. And the next day, you literally might be covering a visit of the President of the United States, the most powerful man in the world. And when you're a general assignment reporter like I was, you cover all aspects of life. And I always used to like to say that you learn a little bit about so many different topics and issues, and that makes you well rounded. And then I always jokingly say that you don't know a lot about anything, but you're just exposed to so many different things. And that's one of the things that I loved about the job. The beauty of the job was just how many different experiences and people I've met through 34 years doing that. And I wouldn't trade that in for anything. But people always ask me, what's your favorite story you've ever done? And there is one that stands out, and it has kind of an ironic twist to it at the end. I get a call from a woman who lives in Richardson. Her name was Seal Blakey. And I had never met her in my entire life. And to this day, I never asked her why she decided to call me. But she said that her husband was a R&B singer in the Dallas clubs. He was known as Big Rockin' Daddy. His real name is Gary Blakey. So she said, Gary has terminal cancer. Uh, he is going to pass away at some point very soon. And his last wish was to meet his idol, the king of the blues, B.B. King.
Oh, wow.
So, yes, so the mother got in touch with B.B. King's manager, and B.B. King was going to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So the mother worked with the manager to arrange a meeting in Cleveland at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame before the concert, the induction concert. So they flew to Cleveland. They went to the venue where the concert was going to be, and security didn't know anything about this meeting. And as a result, they wouldn't let Gary and his wife go backstage. So Gary, of course, was terminally ill. He wasn't well. They couldn't wait around for this to go through. So they left the venue, got in a cab, went to the airport, flew back to Dallas without meeting BB King. The mother, again, she called me. I'm not sure why. And she said, is there anything you can do to make this happen? And I said, gosh, well, I don't even know where to start. Do you have the telephone number of the manager? And she said, yes. I said, let me start with him. Let's see if we can maybe make this happen somewhere else. So I called the manager, and he said that BB King was going to be at the Jazz Festival in New Orleans, but that wasn't a good place because that is very crazy. The following week, BB King was going to be in a casino resort in Gulfport, Mississippi. He said, Steve, if you can get him there, we'll make it happen. And I said, do I have your word? And he said, you got it, baby. I said, okay, well, let's plan on it then. So my next call was to that resort in Gulfport, and I met this fabulous woman who was the director of PR. She was so excited about making this happen. She said, we're going to treat them like royalty. And then I called Southwest Airlines, told them the situation, and they comped the airfare for Gary and his wife to New Orleans. So me and a photographer accompanied them. We flew to New Orleans. We rented a van. We drove to Gulfport, Mississippi. We checked into the hotel. We met the PR director. And oh my gosh, they had free meals at every restaurant. They gave them a stack of drink coupons for the concert, put them up for free in the hotel. So she said, hey, go freshen up and meet me in the lobby in an hour. So we came back with the couple. They led us into this room backstage to where the concert was going to be. And there were two recliners in the room. And Gary sat down. We set up our camera on a tripod. BB King walked in the room. And he was so nice and gracious. They talked for about 45 minutes. BB King was telling all kinds of stories about how his famous guitar got the name of Lucille. And it was just so beautiful. And there was one moment in the middle of their discussion where Gary turns around, he looks at me and says, Steve, I can't believe this. I'm sitting here talking to BB King like he's my next door neighbor. And I was so touched by that. And then as soon as the conversation ended, BB shook his hand and walked out of the room. And Gary was in tears. And that's when we interviewed him. And he goes, gosh, he goes, what an amazing blessing to meet BB King. And he's such a gracious man. It was so nice of him to spend that time with me. Well, it was beautiful. I love that it all came together, and I love that I played a role in making it happen. That just stood out to me. But here's the irony. Gary passed away about 3 weeks later. A few weeks after that, I was diagnosed with cancer, and I had Hodgkin's lymphoma. So I mean, here I'm working with this person to give them their last wish, and then within 2 months later, I'm now fighting my own cancer battle.
Oh, how ironic.
Yeah, and so the medical reporter for Channel 4 at the time, his name was John Hammerly. He wanted to follow me from the day I was diagnosed with cancer all the way through treatment to whatever the conclusion was. And one of the things that made it a little more interesting is Susan, my wife, was 8 months pregnant with our youngest son when I was diagnosed. So John Hammerly, the medical reporter, did a series of stories called The Cancer Chronicles. And he interviewed me the day I was diagnosed with cancer. He wanted a commitment that I would stick with it no matter what happened, and I said I would. And my whole reason for doing it was I had a lump in my armpit that felt like a golf ball, and I blew it off for months thinking it was a muscle situation that I had no idea it was cancer. I didn't have very many symptoms other than this golf ball in my armpit. So like I told I went to my doctor for a sinus infection, and I was debating whether or not I should even show him this thing. And once he felt it, his whole personality changed and said, "We need to get that biopsy." And I said, "Well, what do you think it is?" He said, "It could be 150 different things. Worst case scenario, lymphoma." It's like, lymphoma, that's cancer. He said, "Yes, but let's take it out and let's see what it is." So the very next day, I had the biopsy, and the day after that, I got a call from my doctor that I had cancer. I had lymphoma. So they followed me from that day. The camera was there when the baby, who my youngest son, Jake, who's now 28, was born. We had the TV camera in there. And whenever there was a milestone in my treatment, the first chemo treatment, when I finished chemo and I started radiation, they did a story. And yeah, it was pretty interesting. John actually won a few awards for the Cancer Chronicles, but I was very proud of that. So again, the reason why I decided to do it was if there was one person that saw any of these stories and it encouraged that person to go see a doctor, then number one, maybe it would be nothing and we could give that person peace of mind. But on the other side of the coin, if that person actually had cancer, we may have given him a reason to get checked and he could get an early start on treatment. And it could be the difference between life or death. So when I started thinking in those terms, I said, I have to do this series. I feel a responsibility and need to do it. You know, just one person, if we could help one person have peace of mind, the series is a success. You know, nothing lost, everything gained.
Yeah, what a
Yeah.
touching story. And you're right. You never know who you're going to affect in life. And thank you for sharing that. And
Yeah. Yeah.
maybe this story will help someone too. So
I hope so.
I do too.
Yeah.
So
And that wasn't the first time I had cancer. During COVID, I had prostate cancer, and we were fortunate there too. We caught it very early, and I went through radiation. I didn't have to have the prostate taken out, and here I am, a few years later. You know, healthy. You know, very very blessed to have survived cancer twice.
yes, and we're thankful you're here because
Me too, because I don't like the alternative.
so what about your most, unique and funniest story that you covered? Does one come to mind? What
Funniest story?
uh,
Gosh, yeah, there's quite a few funny ones. There was a
out of nine
gentleman.
thousand?
Yeah, the funniest thing that ever happened to me was there was a gentleman, Jim Dunlap, and we always used to say he was the Marlon Perkins of Plano. If you remember Marlon Perkins, he used to host Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom, and they would always show different animals, you know, and his sidekick Jim would always have the direct contact with the animal, and Marlon was the whoops, turn my phone on. Sorry about that. Harlan would always be like in the background while Jim was dealing with it, whether it was a crocodile or an elephant. So it was a really good show. But Jim Dunlap, uh, he was the director of the Outdoor Learning Center for the Plano ISD, and he had a lot of animals at the Outdoor Learning Center. And through the years, just gave me countless great ideas for stories. You know, someone would have a bobcat as a pet, and then something would happen to them, and there was nowhere to take the bobcat. So Texas Parks and Wildlife would bring them to Jim. He had an alligator called One Grab. I said, "Why did you name it One Grab?" He said, "Because with an alligator, that's all you get." And he was a very special man, very, very special. But one time I was doing a story on snakes, and three generations of students at PISD knew of this giant snake that was Jim's teaching tool. Her name was Katie. She was a Burmese python, and she was about that thick and about 18 feet long. So I called Jim and he says, why don't you come on down to the Outdoor Learning Center and you can use Katie as a visual aid to your live shot. I said, oh, that's a great idea. So I went there and big snake like that, you can only hold like a section of her in the front.
Right.
So I was holding Katie and, her big head was going like this and her little tongue was coming out. She was looking at the camera. It was a great shot. And I said, this is Katie. Katie's a Burmese python. She's 18 feet long and weighs 180 pounds. And then I got into the tape portion of my story. So as soon as I got into the tape portion, Jim has his hands full and he's giving me this look of death. I go, what are you looking at me for? What happened? He goes, do you have any idea what you said? And I go, yeah. I said, Katie's 18 feet long. She's 180. He goes, that's not what you said. I went, oh no, what did I say? Jim said, you said Katie was 180 pounds and 18 inches long. That is one big fat snake, Steve. So that was really funny, and I kind of never lived that down with him. He'd always bring that up. And may he rest in peace. A few years ago, he passed away, and we still miss him to this day. He was such a special guy. And so many people, I mean, people in Plano, their kids were taught by Jim, the parents and the kids. I mean, it's just so amazing how many people this guy touched. And one day he called me up. He said, I got to ask you a favor. He goes, it's going to sound really weird. And I go, what? He said, will you speak at my funeral? I go, yeah, you're right, Jim. That's a very weird question. I said, first of all, of course I will. Secondly, I have a feeling you're going to be around for a long, long time. But I think he had a premonition that he had a bad heart. And it was probably within a year he passed away. And I was good on my promise. They had a wonderful celebration of life for the man at Plano Senior High. And I did speak at his celebration of life, and it was amazing. Everyone had a funny story, and it truly was a celebration. But definitely one of my top 5 favorite people was Jim Dunlap.
That's wonderful. Well,
and in some way, he was a mentor too, because of the way he looked at life. He was very. He had a deep appreciation for humor. And I've been that way ever since I was a kid, always looking for the one-liner to make people laugh. So yeah, he was a mentor because I saw how he lived, and it just touched so many people. So he was a mentor and an inspiration. Yeah.
well, we're close to running out of time, but I don't want to ask you to speak at my funeral.
No, please don't.
But anyway, I know you turn it into good laughs if I did ask you, but anyway, we'll just not go there for now and leave on a note and on a good note. And then I want to wish you all the best retirement and the most fun you can have with your beautiful bride, Susan, my great friend, Susan, creative friend who I love very
Well,
much. And
we have really enjoyed our friendship with you and Doug. And we are just so happy that we met you guys. I mean, it's been so much fun having you as friends. And I'm always in awe of you and Doug because of your incredible talent. I mean, you are not only are you an amazing writer, I mean, you've written what, 3 novels?
written 2 published, well, some instruction books, but I don't count those. But also, I'm writing 3 at the moment, and an idea for a 4th one.
I mean,
But
you're a great writer, but if anyone has ever seen your art, and Doug too, oh my gosh, both of you are just, I can't believe 2 people as talented as you are happen to get married. Talk
thank
about
you.
a power couple, man.
Oh,
But
I'm glad he
but
stalked me.
But it's been amazing to have both of you as friends, and we look forward to continuing that friendship and seeing you guys in Florida.
We'll see you in Florida. And thank you for being my mentor and mentoring others, because you're a wonderful, loving, kind person. And I love you very much.
Same here, right back at you. Thank you, Kiki. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Thank you, Steve. Adios.
Adios.